This is Get Real with Bob and Stacy, the show that helps you learn about the mortgage and real estate markets. Get the inside scoop from their expert list of guests and have some fun along the way. Now, here's Bob Gallagher and Stacy Alcorn.
Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacy. You're joining us for our Leaders and Legends segment, and our guest is Matt Ginsberg. Matt received a doctorate in mathematics from Oxford in 1980 at the age of 24. He's done research in mathematical physics, artificial intelligence. He also wrote a program that was used to successfully trade stocks and stock options on Wall Street, and he's the author of Factor Man. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. We just talked to Matt before our interview, and he is the jack of all trades of the smartest people in the world. Sounds like it at least. I don't even know where to start the interview, but I'm going to start. One of the things we wanted to talk about today is your new book, Factor Man, which is, it sounds like a really awesome fiction book. Tell us about Factor Man.
I have spent most of my professional career trying to solve a very specific problem that if I could solve it, I would change the world profoundly. And I haven't done it. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to write a book about some guy who succeeds where I have sort of struck out. And that's what it's about. It's about a guy who does solve this problem. He can change the world. And he's sort of in this race to try and change the world in benign ways before a variety of sort of bad actors get a hold of him and make him stop.
Wow. That's deep. Like, what is the one thing that has to be done to change the world?
So the thing that he solves and I have failed to solve is a piece of code that basically can solve any problem. It's referred to as God's algorithm in computer science circles, because you really can do anything. You probably can cure cancer. You can certainly make better drugs. You can break every code that people have on the internet. And there's a huge amount of promise in that technology, but there's also sort of a huge amount of sort of danger. If you can't encrypt your credit card when you use something, when you use it to buy something on Amazon, that's potentially bad. So you've got, his goal is to release the technology without messing up the whole planet, which turns out to be hard. And there are a bunch of people who don't want the technology out there at all. So it's a matter of him sort of staying ahead of them until he has a chance to give it away.
Yeah, that sounds interesting, because basically if that algorithm exists, which it must, it seems like it must exist, but that could be the end of the world too.
I think so. It's not clear it exists. There's actually a big debate in the computer science community, and I think it exists, but I'm in the minority. But scientists do this, right? We figure out that you can build, we figure out you can split the atom, and that can easily be the end of the world. And we just sort of release it into society and figure that society will by and large do smart things with amazing new technology. And it's, I hope that optimism is justified as a scientist who releases stuff, but it's an odd way to do things. People make these earth-shattering discoveries, and then they're just out there waiting for somebody, hopefully, to use them more for good than otherwise.
Wow. All right. Sounds like an amazing
Sorry
book.
to go all
Factor
philosophical
Man.
on you.
Yeah, no. It's Factor Man by Matt Ginsberg. Hopefully everybody's going to go and buy a copy. I know I'm going to check it out. The next question.
That'd be great.
I know that in your bio I read that you write crossword puzzles, I think, for the New York Times.
I do. I can't solve crossword puzzles.
Okay, you write them. So that's a job. They don't have computers that do that?
Computers help, but a lot of crosswords have some interesting twist that ideally you've never seen before. So I had a puzzle, for example, where the clue might be industrial German city, and the T's were removed from the clue, and the answer was sugar. And the reason the answer is sugar is because the answer is really Stuttgart, but if you take all the T's out of Stuttgart, you get sugar. And the whole puzzle was like this, and a computer can't think of that. So you have all
Wow.
these interesting twists in crossword puzzles, and it still, thankfully, means you need people to sort of make them up.
Right.
Now, having said that, I'm a terrible solver, and when one of my puzzles come out in the New York Times, it takes about a year from the time you submit it till the time it appears. I can't do it. So
Wow.
even though it's my puzzle, it's too hard for me because I'm just awful.
So
And
what is crosswordtournament.com?
Crossword Tournament, so because I'm so terrible, I wrote a computer program that solves crosswords. It's good, and it competes in the annual crossword tournament, which is the weekend around May 25th, and it's held in Stanford, and you have about 600 of the best crossword solvers in the world piled into a room trying to solve 7 crosswords faster and more correctly than each other. And, you know, one of the people in the room is me running my computer program. Last year I was 11th. And
Wow.
hopefully this year I'll do a little better, but we'll see.
Interesting. And then the third thing that we wanted to ask you about is your business, which is Connected Signals. Tell us what that's all about.
So Connected Signals gets traffic light data, and it gets it to cars. So we can do things like we have an app, and if you happen to live in a covered city and you're running the app and you stop at a red light, the app will tell you how long you're going to be stuck there. And you know if you have time to safely tune the radio or settle the fight your kids are having in the back seat or whatever. We tell you when you're approaching a green light if you're going to make it. Everybody, well, I can't speak for everybody, but when I am 100 yards away from a green light, I want to speed up because I don't want it to turn red before I get there. That's dangerous, so we can tell people they don't have to. And the goal is to make people safer, to make them more fuel efficient. We can save about 10% in city driving, and to sort of make driving just generally more pleasant, which I think we also do. And running that company is a blast. We're this little tiny company, but we can save the world about 200 million tons of carbon a year.
Wow. So is that how, like, I think about how there are companies out there that have developed cars that basically drive themselves, so it has to be connected to something like that it knows the signals?
That is a great question. We think the answer is yes. Some people think the answer is no because those cars are just going to look at the traffic lights and figure them out. But it turns out that the software people have for looking at traffic lights is not very good yet. If the traffic light, if there's glare or fog or all sorts of stuff, then the cars can get confused. And having these autonomous cars being confused about what color a traffic light is terrible because they'll just drive through a red light thinking it's green.
Right.
So we expect that, we're going to be talking to them as well and telling them, oh, no, the light's red, you better stop. So that's part of what we expect this information to be used for.
Wow. So right now, for anybody that just tuned in, we have Matt Ginsberg. He is author of Factor Man, so you can check out his book, available on Amazon. You can also go to his website at mattginsberg.com. We also talked about crosswordtournament.com and the program he wrote to solve crossword puzzles. And then we were just talking about Connected Signals, which is a company he has that will tell you real time what the traffic light is going to be doing as you're driving, which is kind of awesome. I'm curious, like, what does your life look like? Do you wake up, first of all, do you sleep?
Yes, I sleep a lot. And if I don't sleep, I get really cranky.
And, like, do you have ideas in the middle of the night that you're like, oh, I need to figure out how to write God's code?
I do sometimes. That's usually bad because then I have to get up and act on them, and then I didn't get much sleep, and then I'm cranky the next day, and my family suffers. Mostly, I do a lot of different things. I think the one skill that I have is I'm really good at switching. So, I'm sitting at work, and it turns out that I have 10 minutes. I can go and use that to work on my crossword solving program. And I'll actually manage to think about it and get something done in 10 minutes. The crossword solving program, for those who care, is called Dr. Phil, F-I-L-L, sort of a terrible pun.
That's funny. And then as far as...
You also mentioned that you were a stunt pilot, right, before we got started today? I'd love to hear what that's all about.
that is about my failed desire to be an astronaut. When I got my PhD from Oxford, I didn't know what I was going to do next, whether I was going to be an academic, whether I could find a job. And one of the things I decided I wanted to be was an astronaut. And I applied and figured they would like me more if I were a stunt pilot, so I learned to be a stunt pilot. And then they decided totally correctly that I would be the worst astronaut ever, and I didn't get to be one. But I'm not, if you tell the astronaut, turn the thing, turn the screw 1.5 turns clockwise, you really don't want the astronaut to say, why? I think we should only turn it 1 turn clockwise. Can you tell? Because you don't want him to do that, and I can't help myself. I'm always asking, why should I do this? I'm always arguing back, and that's really just not. And NASA figured this out. They asked my references, does he have any flaw at all? And they all said, well, he's not really awesome at following directions. And NASA said, okay, you're done. And they're right. That's not what you want. That's not what you want. You got a whole planet full of people helping on the ground, and you want the guy in space to just do what he's told.
Gotcha. Do you still fly?
I do. I was when I was at Oxford, I was engaged, and my fiance dumped me rather than move back to the States with me, and I was totally depressed. So I built a stunt plane, and I still have it, and I still fly it upside down.
Wow.
And I'm now married, so I have a better wife and a stunt plane.
Everything worked out in the end.
It does.
We have a couple minutes left. I'm curious about, is this the first book you wrote?
In that sense, yes. It's the first fiction book I've written. I have a few nonfiction books, and what I learned writing them helped. So I wrote an artificial intelligence textbook, and it was relatively short. It was very conversational. It had a lot of jokes in it, which you don't normally find in computer science texts. And it taught me how to write. So, everything I learned there, I think, hopefully Factor Man is also funny and engaging and all of that stuff. I think it's important, right? If you're reading something, you want to be having a good time while you're reading it.
Right. Would you write another fiction book now that this one's done?
So you asked me how insane my life was, and my wife didn't really want me to write this fiction book. So I do have another fiction book I want to write, but I have to sell one of my companies that I run first, and then I'm allowed. But right now I'm not supposed to add anything that big to my already crazy life.
And then how long did it take you from the moment you said, all right, I don't know that I'm going to be the one to figure out God's code, so I will settle for writing a book about somebody that figures it out? How long did it take you from that moment to getting it done? So to having a first draft, to having something I was willing to show people and have them read and say, this is good or this is bad, probably 6 months. And then from then to now is a very long process, because you have endless edits, and then you have printing and publishing, and just the whole process is very long. But writing it, I mean, as I was thinking about, it was tremendous fun to think about this guy who solved this problem I haven't been able to solve, and I could, mentally I could be him for a little while. So I just had a blast, and I was just typing and trying to keep up with what I imagined happening to him. So it was pretty fast. So I'm curious, you have so many things going on. 100 years from now, what is your legacy? What do you leave behind? What are you going to be known for?
Oh, I'm going to be known for solving this problem and finding God's algorithm. No doubt about it.
Okay. So you're still working on it, even though you've finished the book and...
Yeah, and the scary thing is the book is a great plan. And if I actually solve it, I can't use that plan anymore because I've disclosed it in the book. So I'm going to need a new plan. God. But yes, I'm still working on it. I'm still hopeful. And if the world's going to remember me in a century, that's the only reason. I mean, yeah, Dr. Phil, I'm one of a zillion people. Dr. Phil will eventually win the tournament. And somebody else did chess, and somebody did checkers, and somebody just did poker, and I'll be one of the people who sort of was responsible for getting one of the games over the finish line. But that's just going to be a tiny footnote. But if I find God's algorithm, then people actually will remember. So I'm going to keep working on it. Maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't.
Yes. Wow. Awesome stuff. So where's the easiest place for people to follow you?
I am so terrible at social media. I will hopefully get better. Matt L. Ginsberg is my Twitter handle. MattGinsberg.com is where I will put, stuff about the book and about the CrossFit tournament and sort of generally try and keep that updated. And when the tournament starts, I'll be tweeting about, how the program is doing, and I'll undoubtedly start tweeting, when we get closer to the publication date, which is March 20th. So either of those two things. I don't have a Facebook. Somebody's eventually going to make me have a Facebook, and I'll be sad. But right now, I don't have one.
All right. Awesome. Matt Ginsberg, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more Get Real after this.